you want me to start introducing you, Billie?
Yep, if you want to begin now, Kay, that'd be great. We
Okay.
can get going.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Billie Sutherland has been a Toastmaster since 2010 and has earned her Distinguished Toastmaster DTM designation 10 years later. You see, Toastmasters is a process and you go at it at your own pace. When Billie joined Great Plains Toastmasters, she took on several meeting roles quickly. The evaluator role was the last role Billie started signing up for in her club meetings. She had the fear of not being able to prepare enough to speak, but also that the fear that she wouldn't be able to help her fellow members improve. We must remember that the evaluator roles are not just for the speakers to learn and grow. As the person filling an evaluator role, we are also learning and growing. Today, you'll learn how to evaluate with courage because you'll understand the importance of an evaluations and learn how to provide constructive feedback. Please help me welcome Billie Sutherland to present Evaluate with Courage. Yay!
Thank you, Kay, and thank you everybody else for joining this evening to listen to me speak about Evaluate with Courage. When I was asked to speak and I didn't really have a specific topic I wanted to cover, I asked the committee for ideas, and this was one of them, which I actually kind of resonated towards because, like mentioned in my intro, evaluations can be very intimidating. Do you know that actually 1/3 of our Toastmasters meetings are actually taken up because of time spent on evaluations? When I was thinking it through this process for speaking tonight, I actually came across that little statistic and realized, we are giving evaluations more often than we really realize we are in our meetings. I mean, obviously the first one we think about is the speaker evaluator. That's really the key one in the meeting for us to get our feedback, but also the general evaluator and some others that I'll talk about in a little bit too as well. So this is one of our key mechanisms in Toastmasters, and I think it's overlooked because when we talk about Toastmasters or evangelize it, we really talk about communication and leadership skills, but you're really developing a lot of evaluation skills too as well. And today I'm hoping to help you understand why it's important, give you some tactics as well to help you be able to give feedback a little bit better, and also talk about what's in it for you versus not just what's in it for the person that's receiving that feedback too as well. Oh, I went one too far. There we go. All right. I don't know if many of you know, but I've worked at Microsoft for 18 years now. So been a while. And Bill Gates, former CEO and co-founder of Microsoft, said this: we all need feedback as people. That's how we improve. There are plenty of things we don't recognize are in ourselves that maybe we need to improve upon as well. And over the years of working at Microsoft, we do certain activities too as well. And we call them actually perspectives, which I think is really kind of cool. I like that word a lot, better than feedback actually, because evaluations are a perspective from that person. And you can get perspectives that are different from many different people within your club group as well. So I highly recommend, if you have the opportunity to get multiple perspectives when being evaluated, do that. Some clubs have their speech evaluator, and then they hand out forms to everyone else so that you can write an evaluation for someone, even though you may not be playing that evaluator role in that meeting. And then you can get multiple perspectives back. So I think that's really kind of a great thing. As mentioned, evaluator role, that was the last role I ever wanted to fill when I joined Toastmasters because I was very intimidated about it. I actually was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to help my other members. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle with evaluations, because we just need a little more guidance about how we can present the information in a way that can be utilized well. And we're going to talk about some tactics that you could use too as we go through here today. Now, we all can improve. I was just telling my son that the other day. He asked me, because I told him, I said, my evenings are busy this week because of Toastmasters conference. He's like, why do you still do that? Like, you've been doing it for over 10 years. Why do you still do it? Because I still have things to improve upon. I actually told my club this morning, one of the sessions is about, speaking without notes. I can't speak without notes. And now here I'm kind of cheating because I have my two screens. I got multiple things showing in front of me. You may not even know I have notes there, but I'm using them because that's kind of my safety net. And I continue to try to work and use less and less notes as I work through Toastmasters itself. So first thing we're going to talk about now is evaluator roles. And I briefly touched on this a little bit ago, but of course, the first one we know about the most is the speaker, or the speech evaluator, excuse me. And that's their main purpose, is to give that feedback to our members that are speaking. So that's, I think, the first one top of mind when I ask who are evaluators. The second one, obviously, is the general evaluator, and providing that overall view of the meeting as a whole, how things are handled, how people are filling their roles, what could they maybe improve upon in their role, because they're not going to change unless we are able to provide them with that information. But other fields, other roles too, the grammarian. We're giving people feedback all the time about the word usage, incorrect or even really good grammar too as well. We want to consider the stuff people are doing right that other people may not catch as well. AHA counter, we give feedback about filler words, those clutch words, those things that are eating up our precious seconds of portraying our message to people during our speeches and impromptu speaking as well. And also, if you think about it too, the timer gives feedback as well, because we're trying to learn how to be within our timing parameters. And that is something that we continue to work on as well. And then the last one I thought about was obviously a mentor. And that's a very important one too, that members should utilize and get that feedback. It's another perspective. And they'll have a totally different perspective than your speech evaluator, because they know more about you and what you're really working on as well. Anyone else have any other thoughts or other roles you've thought about that might be considered evaluators technically too? You can come off mute quick. I don't have the full screen of everyone in front of me, so. All right, we will move forward then. We're going to talk about purpose. What's the purpose of our evaluations and that role? Okay, you're helping not only the presenter, but everyone in the room. Even though you may be evaluating a specific speaker, try to give the feedback in a way that everybody can learn from it. Just because someone isn't doing hand gestures well doesn't mean someone else may not use that information too when you're providing that feedback to a speaker. Help members be more self-confident and improve their speaking skills. We don't want to belittle them about everything that they might not be doing well. We need to be encouraging. We want them to feel confident. We want them to try harder. If you've had kids, I definitely feel that the positive reinforcement makes a bigger difference with their behavior than negative reinforcement. And I see it the same way with evaluations with adults as well. Help members be more efficient so they're better able to achieve their goals. And that's just, helping them reach those objectives that they have, either for that project or personal objectives they've been working on with their projects as well. perspectives offer observations on what you personally see and observe. So it's about what you are seeing from them, good, and things to improve upon as well. Words are powerful, so use them wisely. I think that's a huge key about providing evaluations. And I have to say, this is something I've worked hard on throughout the years too, as well. And making sure you're presenting your message in a way that it can be very accepting so that they will consider it, because they have a choice to make. No matter what feedback you give, they have the choice to accept it or not. So try to do it in the best way possible so that they are open to hearing it. And I think the biggest thing about, evaluating with courage is actually taking advantage of our Toastmasters situation. That is our safe place. We are there to help each other to advance and move forward and learn. So be courageous with your evaluation and help that member move forward. If you provide helpful, constructive evaluations, it benefits you and that speaker as a whole. And then we want to ensure our words don't have unintended consequences, obviously. So we want to use them carefully. Who remembers the Toastmasters promise? One of the key bullets in there is that we provide fellow members with helpful, constructive evaluations. So we want to keep that in mind when we're doing our evaluations as well. Am I helping this person? Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about what's in it for me. Now, when I first joined Toastmasters and being an evaluator, I was thinking mostly obviously about the member I'm evaluating and what they're going to get out of this, because that's where my fear was, that am I really going to help them with what I say? And that's key, because you're not always just helping that person, you're helping yourself as well. And in the main roles, the speaker evaluator, you're practicing your speaking, listening specifically as well, your critical thinking. You're going to provide feedback out of it, obviously, and you're going to motivate them too as well. So if you really think about it, you are building all of these skills so that you can then be helpful to that person as well. And I really didn't think about it like that. Think about the flip side of the coin, they say. There's always two sides, the one side for the receiver and the one side for the giver. You're learning to do that well. And then if you're the general evaluator, you're going to do a lot of the same things as a speaker evaluator, but you're also going to have more leadership skills associated with that too as well, with your planning, your preparation, helping those other team members, your timer, grammarian, prepare and be ready to fill those roles to the best of their ability too as well. Now let's be prepared as evaluators. I think this is the key thing too. To be courageous as an evaluator, you need to be prepared for the role. And I see this a number of times where people feel they really don't have to do much. They just have to show up to a meeting and you're going to listen to a speaker and you can provide feedback, but that's not the truth, right? We know there takes some preparation to that too. So first thing, as the speaker evaluator, review that evaluation form ahead of time. You want to understand the presentation, the project they're working on, and the objectives for that project. I take time to process things, so giving yourselves a couple days to look at this and then think about it and go back and look at it again would be very beneficial to yourself and obviously the speaker to fully understand what you're going to evaluate on. And then ask your speaker prior if there's anything else outside of the objectives from your project. There may be someone working on filler words. It could be something that simple to listen for and make sure that they aren't using very many, or using pauses instead of filler words, whatever it may be, hand gestures, vocal variety, all those things that you could easily watch for on top of what their objectives are. Another thing you could also do is review the content in the evaluation and feedback project in Pathways. I actually had not gone through that until I started preparing for this presentation. There's a lot of great information in there as well that would help people understand the importance and how you can give more constructive feedback to people. Now, as general evaluator, you can have a copy of the general evaluator's checklist. I actually did not know this existed until a few years ago, and I kind of wish I knew about it because it would have been very helpful in my early years of really learning the roles of a Toastmaster too, besides just learning from observing. This gives a great starting point for someone new. And so I share this all the time with our new members when they're getting ready to take on this role. I do have a resources tab at the end of the deck too, with links to a lot of the stuff I've pulled together for this PowerPoint. So that will be shared with you guys too as well at the end. So don't worry about having to go search for that checklist. There'll be a link for it. Sync with your team as well as the general evaluator and be sure they understand their responsibilities. It could be simple as your timer. You know, some people new don't realize that, hey, you need to keep the indicators up until you switch to the next indicator. And explaining to them why that's important will clarify why they need to do it. Not because they're doing it wrong, but the importance of why you need to do it right. Now we're going to move into some tactics. This is probably what you're kind of looking for of like, how do I really do all this? So first thing is always keep it motivational. Provide a beginning and end with your praise. We call it the sandwich method, right? And here are some key things you could use as far as verbiage. Here's something you do well. I hope you keep doing it. Here's a suggestion how you can leverage the strength other. These are actually statements that I pulled out of what we use at Microsoft when we're doing our evaluations too, as well, our perspectives of other people at work when they request it from us personally. I think they're stated great and kind of just starts off on the right foot for both sides. So suggest specific solutions or actions to build the skills. So here's something I want you to rethink. Here's an example to consider doing it another way. I love examples. I am a practical person. I am pretty black and white. So if you can give me an example of how to do something different in a better way, that will stick with me a lot better than anything else. Or include it in a story, because who doesn't love a story and who doesn't remember stories when they're told to them too, especially if they have some meaning behind them too as well. That's very important. Evaluation form scores. This is the part when I get an evaluation form back from my projects and I see mostly 5s, I actually am kind of disappointed because really, if you look at the scoring mechanism, 3 means you're meeting expectations. So you're doing really good. 4 and 5 means you're doing awesome. Like you're like a professional speaker and hardly make any errors and everything like that. I know I am not a 4 or 5 in most cases. So I really want to understand if your standards are that low, we need to do something about it and maybe have you know, see other people present at different levels. This is why I always promote going to the speech contest, because I love seeing the presentations at the different levels, because you can see how people have improved over the years or even through the different levels of contests too as well. That shows me improvement and stuff. Don't critique every detail. Some people might have a laundry list to go through, but really you only have 2 to 3 minutes in our meetings. So you really got to focus on the objectives of the project and what they want out of it too. So make sure you kind of keep it to like your speeches. You know, we have our opening, you have 3 main points, maybe 4, depending, you know, what you want to talk about, and you wrap it up. It's a mini speech. and keep it specific to what they really need to know about. And the golden rule, presented in a way that you would also like to receive feedback. So if you're thinking about it and you're thinking, oh, that doesn't sound very nice, then maybe try to word it another way too. And then some other suggestions, thing I most value about your style is fill in the blank. And here's some other thoughts on what you can do. Because this is telling them that this is what I'm seeing, but that doesn't mean you're doing things completely wrong either. Now we're going to go in, just checking my time here too as well. I'm going to give you some examples, and I want you to I want you to think about it. I do have some suggestions for better responses in these suggestions, but before I show you my response, I'll definitely give you, some time to think about it and think about what you would say instead. Make it better. And we're going to start off pretty easy, and then we'll get a little more specific in some of these examples as we go. So first thing is, you did that wrong. Well, did what? When? Where? I mean, I get a lot of questions in my head if some evaluator told me that as well. I would say more like, I know a way to do that and get better results. And then share what that obviously better way is so that they have an example to go off of too as well. This one I like a lot. Anyone else want to share another way they would say it potentially? All right, we'll move on to the next one then. I wish you had used more body language. Again, when, why? We talk about gestures being very important, especially using them at the right time too. Explain to them, when is that right time? What would have been a perfect situation in your speech? So here's a more specific response too. Yell stop, put your hand out in front, give that gesture. And obviously add vocal variety too if that wasn't included as well. Those are perfect situations where you could utilize that. Now this would be from a general evaluator's perspective. The transitions in the meeting were not good. So how do we make them better? Tell them how to do that. So when handing off control of the meeting to the general evaluator or table topics master, do not use up precious time for the speakers. Keep that transition to a minimum to keep the meeting on schedule. So key things. I find it a lot with Toastmasters feel they need to use the time for the theme or topic that they've chosen. But really the Toastmaster is not there to have, to share. They have to consider the timing of the meeting. You're there to fill the time when appropriate. You're not allotted like 5 to 7 minutes like our speakers and things like that. You really need to watch the agenda and practice that time management part and fill in where you need to. So having them understand the purpose of that would help them handle that better in the future. Each time I've watched you speak, I've noticed you have your hands in your sports coat jacket. Try to keep your hands out and relaxed. Now this seems pretty specific, doesn't it? But what are other reasons why you would tell someone to not do this? This is specific of don't doing it. This is what I'm seeing you do. But why should I not do it? So I notice your hands were in your pockets much of the speech to me. Closed body language like this conveys a lack of confidence. Using more open, confident body language might help the audience to buy into your message even more. So explain to them about the purpose behind why you should keep your body more open. We have a couple more to do. An evaluator says to a member giving their icebreaker, you should never use cue cards. Now, to me, that's not fair to begin with because it's an icebreaker. This is their first speech. We want them to just get up in front of the club and introduce themselves. Like, this is their first chance of speaking, and most people come to Toastmasters because of their speaking fears. We don't want to scare them off right away. So instead, let's tell them, I noticed you use cue cards, which is very acceptable when you're giving your speech, but when using them, try not to reference them much. Otherwise, it can be distracting. So help them understand, you know what? You may use them. Like I said, I still do today, but make sure it's not a distraction. And eventually, obviously, try not to use them in the future. Try to dwindle it down as you go, speech by speech. During table topics, the same people speak most of the time. So more from a general evaluator's perspective. How can we explain that, you know what, we need to utilize the other members in our club? When leading table topics, try to call in those without roles to allow everyone the opportunity to speak during meetings and practice their impromptu skills. And that's really the purpose of table topics, is to get everyone else involved, get them all speaking and sharing. Okay, so the goal is never to be perfect because we'll never get there. None of us will. We always just want to be better tomorrow. And if we're able to be those courageous evaluators and give good constructive feedback, our members will come back the next day and hopefully be a little bit better. Sometimes it may take longer to develop some of the skills they're working on, but if you are able to see improvement as an evaluator, make sure you give that feedback to people too as well, because just giving that little bit of feedback about how you're seeing improvement is huge. That little bit of encouragement is going to get them to work harder, just because they know what they've been putting into Toastmasters is helping them get where they want to go. Like I mentioned, I do have this resource page as well. This is all hyperlinked to stuff on the toastmasters.org site, so you can find it there. But I will share this out here too as well. But I'm going to stop sharing too. And we're going to use this opportunity for the next less than 10 minutes, I think, or so. And we're going to share any feedback if we want, or any questions. This is really kind of a Q&A for you guys too as well. I see, Bob, you put in the chat, based on my experience, it's very important that speech evaluations be religiously limited to 2-minute maximum. Yeah, I think it's key. Like, you can overwhelm people with feedback too as well, which is why I think it is kind of perfect, like that 2-minute time frame, especially during our Toastmasters setting, to give feedback within there, because you really want them to take away 1 or 2 things. They're not going to work on everything that you tell them. They're going to take 1 or 2 nuggets away from it. And I always think about, like, when I go to conferences and trainings and stuff like that, you never can absorb it all. You're never going to use it all. So if you can take a couple things away from it and implement it and hopefully make some improvements, that's what you're really hoping for. Yeah, good point.
Billie, when you say that you keep it to 2 minutes, then do you do a longer evaluation on the written evaluation or not necessarily?
Yep, I definitely would. I mean, I continue to make sure the key points I did in my speaking portion is in there, but I do elaborate, especially on the page with the scoring definitely too. I will elaborate in the comments there too as well. That's the one thing, the form is kind of limited, even if you know, to
Mhm.
write in those little boxes is hard if you print it out, but also even if you're using it a line in an editable PDF version, you're still limited on how much you can put in there. The other thing I've also done, Kay, is fill out the form and I email it to them. I also include additional in the email too, if I feel I can't fit it in that form itself. So at least they have it there too as well. And there might be something too, maybe that you don't want to include during your verbal feedback because it may be a little more sensitive. You could do that verbally as well at a later time after the meeting or something. Just pull them aside. Hey, there's one other thing I'd like to share with you. But, you know, and you could include it in your written version, obviously, too, as well. But sometimes if you're not sure how to word it, it might be easier to have the conversation versus writing it down too, depending on what it's about. I mean, I struggle sometimes. I don't like writing. I struggle. And when you're trying to make sure it comes across in a very good way for them, then having that conversation off, you know, after the meeting might be a good option too. Not that I have that happen a lot, but you never know.
This is Kathleen from Yap and Yotes and Vermilion. One thing I noticed when we switched to Pathways, they changed the way some of the questions were worded in the evaluation form, and I think it's very helpful the way they do it now. It's how can you get better? And then what is the one thing to challenge you on? So it's not only encouraging you to just do specific things, but to think of small things and bigger things.
Yeah, I like that idea too, Kathleen. Thank you for sharing.
I have a question. This is Bob Reitmeyer. How do you answer the question to challenge yourself?
It depends on who's speaking. We have some very advanced speakers in our club, and I will actually challenge them to use gestures in such a way that they can be seen on a camera in a Zoom meeting or something like that. It's not that they're doing it wrong. It's just they can be better by doing it that way, or maybe by including an example, something like that. I tend to be negative because I come from a very analytic background, and you know, people say I'm too negative, so I really try consciously to use those words, get better and challenge yourself, because I know these people love to compete and they love to speak, and that's why they're there.
Thank you, Kathleen. We'll let our speaker maybe speak to that.
So yeah, I think the biggest thing is we are there to challenge them, right? That's our purpose. We want them to improve themselves. I totally agree with that. And I do struggle sometimes to determine what I feel they should challenge themselves with, especially if it's someone you don't know as well, a newer member, those types of things, and may not know their specific goals very well either. But I do always try to find something that they could work on. And maybe it isn't really like, when I think of a challenge, I think of like, it's definitely going to be hard to do, right? I mean, we all want to work on things to improve ourselves, and they may be small little things. When you say, I want to challenge you, that to me means I'm going to have to work harder to do this, right? To accomplish it. And I do that with my kids. It's kind of that competitive state with my kids too. I'm going to challenge you to accomplish this. So there's different degrees of it, but I think there's always something we can challenge people with. And depending on your history and experience with things, you might find something very interesting to share with that person too as well, that they would have never thought about doing.
This is Bob again. I tend to answer that question a lot of times. Continue to work through the Pathways
Mhm.
projects.
You too.
Yeah, yeah. Clyde had put in the chat. Oh, and I did put in the chat the PowerPoint if you guys want to download it from there. How would you recommend how to deal with an evaluator that is harsh and throws speakers under the bus? Or if the evaluator whitewashes the evaluation? So that comes down to also being evaluated as an evaluator. We have that in our pathways now, right? Like that's in project one. Like that's one of the things we have to accomplish to get feedback as an evaluator. And also, if that person has a mentor, and if you feel that person is more harsh, I would speak to their mentor so that they potentially could speak to that person too as well. Depending on your relationship with the person too, you could speak to them directly if you feel comfortable enough to do that as well. And having them understand your perspective and the perspective of the person receiving that information might help them understand that it's coming across harsh for them, although it might not be from their experience, right? Kathleen, you're talking about how you can be very direct and things like that. And that may be someone's personality, right? But we need to give them a perspective too, because you have to consider how people are going to receive your feedback as well. We talk about types of communication styles. Same thing with evaluating. When you're evaluating, you need to consider your communication style with the person you're communicating with too, as well. And I don't like whitewashy evaluations. I really don't either. When people say, I just loved your speech, it was great, I can't wait to hear the next one, and they just do all this great praise, but there was really no constructive feedback in it. That's when I talk to that person and explain to them, like, your role is to help them learn and grow. You didn't give them feedback about what they need to work on. And that was really kind of straightforward. I probably wouldn't say it exactly like that myself either. But Kim, you have your hand up.
Well, that was kind of my question was, on the whitewashing, when you have people that tend to, they might giggle or laugh because they're not comfortable enough giving, how do you help them to overcome that?
Mm-hmm.
And they're so overly animated, I guess I would call it.
Right. Yep, exactly. And maybe something within clubs could do, especially if you have those newer evaluators in your club, have someone evaluate them as the evaluator to give them some feedback, because they are up there very nervous. And like I said, I dreaded doing it when I first started. And I know I still have a long ways to go. So I love it when, I appreciate when people tell me like, oh, that good job. I really like how you give evaluations. I'm like, great, but I still don't do it as well as I would prefer, right? And thinking about the golden rule, how would I want to receive this information that way too, as well? But I think, like we said, a third of our meeting is evaluating. So utilize the other members in your club to give evaluations as well.
We just got a little notice that we're going to be timed out. So I just want to remind everybody, we can go back and talk until we actually lose them, but I want to remind everybody that there's another session after this. So be sure to go into your agenda and sign up for that. And also remember that tonight the trivia is going on. And this is just the beginning. So let's go ahead and continue to talk, but I need to get my piece in there.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Kay.
Thank you, Carrie, for giving that heads up.
Good job, tech support.
Yeah.
Once we finally got in our room.
I thought it was just me, and I thought my big chance to do something, and I'm not going to get in there to be able to do it.
No, you got it done. You did a good job of the intro too. The one thing, and I keep forgetting it every time I unmute myself. One thing that sometimes we've done in the past when people have gotten sort of slack about doing something Toastmaster-ish is we go back to the club success presentations that are on the Toastmaster International site, and somebody who wants a different, who can fit it into their pathway, essentially will just basically share it with the club. So we could perhaps share this one with the club.
Absolutely.
And it's always great, even if you've got experienced members, to do the refreshers, to remind them of all those details.
All right, well, we do need to end the meeting just so that the next group can get in without any technical difficulties.
Great. Thank
Thank
you
you very much,
all.
Billie.
Thank you, Billie.
Yes. Phoebe.